From Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Saamiyah Syed. Our top story tonight: the U.S. Department of Justice is indicting the Minneapolis Police Department for racial discrimination. After a 2-year investigation, the Justice Department has found its officers used excessive force and batons. The investigation was triggered by the 2020 murder of George Floyd. He was killed by a white police officer who knelt on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes until he suffocated. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland also says Minneapolis police used firearms inappropriately. He says they were used without determining whether someone posed a threat. Garland stresses that such behavior is deeply troubling and undermines public confidence in law enforcement. The investigation also shows officers routinely disregard the safety of those in their custody. According to the report, senior officers do not intervene to prevent junior colleagues from using inappropriate force. Following the report, the city has agreed to federal oversight to reform the police department. The Justice Department is negotiating similar measures in other cities, including Ferguson, Missouri, and Cleveland. President Joe Biden is calling for stricter gun controls in the United States, saying that shootings occur almost daily in the country. Biden was speaking at the National Safer Communities Summit in Connecticut. He says gun violence occurs even in areas that do not make the headlines. The Gun Violence Archive has documented almost 300 mass shootings in the U.S. so far in 2023. Biden has promised to ban assault rifles and end legal protections that prevent gun manufacturers from being held liable for gun violence. He has challenged the gun industry and politicians who support it, saying he would beat them and big money. Muslims in Minneapolis are mourning the loss of 5 young women and teens who were killed in a car accident on Friday. They died after a speeding SUV crashed into their car. Sabirin Ali, Sahra Jisad, Selma Abdelkader, Sajal Hersi, and Siham Adam were preparing for their friend's wedding. Police said the driver blew through a red light and slammed right into their car. All of them died at the scene. Police say after the crash, a man got out of the SUV and ran, but was caught and taken into custody. Authorities have not yet identified the suspect. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court has acquitted a Black Muslim man of sex trafficking charges. The state's highest court overturned a lower court's ruling indicting Anthony Dew in 2015. Dew had been convicted of 19 charges, including 5 counts of trafficking for sexual exploitation and 1 count of rape. His court-appointed attorney Richard Doyle urged Dew to accept a plea bargain. Doyle had a history of posting racist and anti-Muslim vitriol on social media. In 2016, Dew pleaded guilty to all charges except rape. He was the victim of anti-Muslim bias by his attorney. Later, the Massachusetts chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations took up his case, filing a brief in the Supreme Court on Dew's behalf. He was sentenced to up to 10 years in prison. But Dew moved for a new trial and withdrew his guilty pleas in 2021. After the Supreme Court ruling, Dew was released from prison on parole Thursday. A group of Democratic lawmakers are seeking changes to the 13th Amendment. A resolution known as the Abolition Amendment was introduced Wednesday just before Juneteenth, the national holiday commemorating the end of slavery. 3 senators supported the initiative. The resolution seeks to clarify the provision that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude can be imposed as punishment for a crime. Existing provisions allow this. Proponents of the resolution say the 13th Amendment loophole has led to excessive incarceration of Black Americans in notorious prison plantations. Supporters clarify the resolution is not intended to interfere with the ability of incarcerated people to agree to work. Ratification of the constitutional amendment requires a 2/3 majority in both houses of Congress and approval by at least 38 state legislatures. Previous attempts to abolish the slavery exemption have been unsuccessful. More on what scientists are saying about 2023 being the warmest year on record comes with details after the break. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Scientists say 2023 may be the warmest year on record, worsening the climate crisis. The month of June noted a record high in global surface temperatures averaging 1.5 degrees Celsius above normal. The oceans recorded higher than normal temperatures in May. Scientists say it is the first time average temperatures rose above 1.5 degrees Celsius in June. A senior official from the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service says every fraction of a degree has serious consequences for the Earth. The U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration also notes that ice in Antarctica receded to record levels last month due to a rise in temperatures. Muslims in Australia fear a bill to ban the insignia of ISIS may land ordinary Muslims into trouble. The Australian Muslim Advocacy Network says ISIS has been a scourge for the Muslim community. However, they fear police may confuse religious material and harass ordinary Muslims. The proposed legislation would criminalize public display and trafficking of banned symbols in Australia. That includes Nazi symbols and the ISIS flag symbol. Attorney General Mark Dreyfus says the bill aims to combat harassment and vilification of certain communities in Australia targeted by Nazi, neo-Nazi, and ISIS supporters. He also stresses that the government recognizes the distinction between the terrorist organization and the respected Islamic faith. In March, Australia's ruling Labour Party rejected an attempt by the coalition to ban Nazi signs. A French national has desecrated the Quran in Greece's Iskeche province. Mufti Mustafa Trampa told a gathering in Iskeche province that the act was an attack on sacred values. He said violating human dignity and attacking sacred values cannot be considered freedom of expression. He said all people must respect faith and oppose such attacks. Representatives of the Turkish minority in the region said a French national had earlier torn up a copy of the Quran. The suspect was taken to the local police station. Prominent representatives of the Turkish minority and the Greek Ministry of Religious Affairs and Education strongly condemned the act. The majority of the roughly 150,000 members of the Turkish minority in Greece live in Western Thrace, bordering Bulgaria and Turkey. U.S. President Joe Biden's top advisor, Brett McGurk, has arrived in Riyadh to discuss possible normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But Palestinians say they will reject attempts to dilute the issue of Palestine under the guise of Arab-Israeli normalization. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry says it will not accept any attempts to marginalize Palestinians amid efforts to deepen Israel's integration in the Middle East. It said this step poses a danger to the Palestinian issue and the Arab Peace Initiative. Proposed by Saudi Arabia in 2002, the Arab Peace Initiative calls for normalizing relations with Israel in return for its withdrawal from Arab territories occupied in 1967. Under the U.S. initiative, the UAE and Bahrain signed agreements to normalize ties with Israel in September 2020. Sudan and Morocco followed suit. Palestinians have decried the normalization agreements as a stab in the back. 6 Arab countries have diplomatic ties with Israel, including Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. At least 78 migrants drowned after a fishing boat they were on capsized off the Greek coast. Many of the people on board the vessel were from the Pakistan-administered part of Kashmir. A total of 104 migrants have been rescued, but the death toll is feared to be rising. Survivors say there were more than 600 migrants on board, mostly from Pakistan, Egypt, and Syria. Pakistan's foreign ministry confirmed 12 of the survivors were Pakistani nationals. Hundreds of unemployed Pakistani youth risked their lives to reach Europe by sea and land. They pay huge sums of monies to smugglers despite risking their lives. Many of them are shot by border guards. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has ordered a crackdown on human traffickers nationwide. So far, investigating agencies have arrested 10 suspected traffickers from different parts of the Pakistan-controlled part of Kashmir. More than 1 million pilgrims have arrived in Saudi Arabia for this year's Hajj pilgrimage. Saudi Arabia says the influx of pilgrims from across the world continues. The 6-day rituals of Hajj begin next week. Saudi official Mohammed al-Bijawi said the kingdom is expecting to receive more than 2 million pilgrims for Hajj this year. The country downsized Hajj attendance in the last 3 years due to restrictions imposed from COVID-19. Last year, 900,000 pilgrims were allowed to travel to perform Hajj. As war in Yemen is taking a heavy toll on the land, natural disasters are also wreaking havoc on the country's underground resources. Experts say the country's most valuable resource, groundwater, is rapidly running out. Every day, people have to travel long distances in search of water. Children often must walk long distances and sometimes wait for hours at public pumps to fill jerry cans before going to school. Yemen is among the countries with the greatest water shortages in the world. War and climate change have exacerbated the country's water shortage. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says groundwater in Yemen is running out twice as fast as it is also being replenished. The organization says Yemen could run out of groundwater within 20 years. According to the International Committee of the Red Cross, the country's piped water network reaches less than 30% of Yemenis. This leaves millions to rely on private companies or unsafe wells. Many non-Muslim countries are promoting halal tourism to attract Muslims. A report by the Global Muslim Travel Index shows Muslim travel spending, which totaled $180 billion in 2019, is expected to reach $300 billion by 2026. Leading the trend is Japan, which recently launched initiatives to promote the halal-certified food industry. Many countries are catering to the sensitivities of Muslim tourists by offering prayer rooms, certified halal food, and gender-segregated swimming and spa facilities. Turkey tops the list for Muslim travelers as the most tourist-friendly destination. Experts say the tourism sector in non-Muslim countries is looking to capitalize on young Muslims' urge to travel for entertainment and leisure. And that's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.